Hello, I'm Morris Ruddick. The series has been addressing Jewish business secrets. In our last session, we began looking more closely at the legacy of the Jews. As this legacy comes into its fullness, we find it is releasing destiny and the restoration of what was promised to Abraham centuries ago. In just this last generation, significant keys to this restoration have been emerging. They are the keys to restoring what was promised to Abraham's descendants. These are the keys to the time Jesus spoke of, when a great shift would take place in the world, and the model exemplified by Abraham of reflecting an economic trust society with God at the center would come into place. Together with the foundations will come the legacy and the power. The legacy will involve a focus on God that was outlined in the foundations, rather than add-on speculative doctrines. The legacy will be defined by the culture of being a prophetic people of God. It will be a movement that goes beyond institutional and generational constraints, a movement tied to a different power, the pure power of the Creator. Once again, it is the simple things that confound the wise. This movement will operationally be built on foundations of business incubator and community builder minions, the small gatherings that flow in the mantle of being blessed to be a blessing. There will be an explosion of purposeful gifts reflecting the scope represented by the Jewish achievements noted by Mr. Peace. Congregations will form around allied minions, and communities will be the outgrowth of congregations working toward common ends. Congregations and communities will be centered on and based on such common purposes, rather being driven by doctrinal stances. The reality of God's presence will negate the need for the precepts of men. With a world seeking the reality of God through a people, this will be the light on the hill that cannot be hidden. This movement will reflect a different way of thinking, which creates and brings increase. This will be a thinking that has prevailed in Jewish culture over the millennia. This legacy will bring restoration at both congregational and community levels. All this will dovetail with the fulfillment of God's promises to Abraham, with its pivot point being the land promised to Abraham, the land of promise, Israel. This is the pathway unfolding for those who discern and embrace the legacy of the Jews. This is the legacy of a people whose remarkable feats have astounded the world with blessings and goodness tied to a destiny of being restorers and rebuilders of a world gone amok. It is in this legacy that a connection and purpose that transcends time is actuated. So what does all this mean in today's world in terms of Jewish business secrets for the Jew and the non-Jew? We return to the story of Joseph and the Jewish dynamic of being a culture within a culture. We've already gone into detail in a previous session about Joseph's betrayal at the hand of his brothers and how he came to be in Egypt. We covered his 13 years of slavery and prison, in which Joseph maintained his strong identity in God, as well as operating faithfully as a prophetic steward for those he served. Then came the time when his prophetic gift, evident to all he served, was needed by Pharaoh. Pharaoh was amazed, stating there was no one like Joseph, in whom resided the Spirit of God. From that, an alliance was formed, in which Joseph became the second in charge of Egypt, the steward over the resources of the land. What Egypt faced was a time of crisis. Yet Joseph's anticipatory response to preparing for those times brought great blessing to the house of Pharaoh and the house of Israel. was a time of destiny. Not only was disaster averted for each, but the destiny of the descendants of Abraham was restored from the impact of the digressions committed by Joseph's older brothers. Then we have another issue that began with a generation following, reputedly, the wisest man who ever lived, Solomon. It involved the dispersion among the nations of 10 of the tribes of Israel and the destiny foretold for the nations. Solomon's successor refused the overtures of the 10 northern tribes that David had brought together with the house of Judah. Then, despite prophetic intervention, the man who became leader of the northern tribes, Jeroboam, led them to separate themselves. It began the dispersion and assimilation of these descendants of Abraham into the nations. Yet, by the words of the Jewish prophets, their destiny in God has been foretold as being restored in the latter days. Jesus made the point that the mantle he bore was first to the Jew. From the Jew would come the fulfillment of the destinies that God foretold Abraham would go to all the peoples of the earth. Not unlike the days of Joseph, the days are close at hand when there will be alliances between forerunners like Joseph and gatekeepers like Pharaoh, whose efforts will avert disruptions and maintain the legacy. So there has been an awakening taking place today with the Jews, with the diaspora of the Jews, to the great dispersion of the descendants of Abraham, and then to all who would give honor to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It is a time of destiny. It is written that he will give light to those who live in darkness and the shadow of death, to guide their feet into the way of peace. The legacy of the Jews is the legacy of Jesus, who clearly stated that his mission was to put an axe to the root of evil and restore the foundations outlined by the writings of Moses and the prophets. This is the legacy. It is the root system and lens through which we can better understand this dynamic we've referred to as Jewish business secrets. The father of a Jewish friend I once worked with founded Godfather's Pizza. Willie Thiessen was described in an article as one who had gone far afield to follow his passion for business. He's been an entrepreneur through and through. Once he became fixed on an opportunity, whether of his own creation or when leveraging an existing one, he has applied his high energy, long vision, laser focus, risk tolerance, and untiring persistence to translate his dreams into reality. This description describes a key aspect of the Jewish DNA. Yet, as it has been for centuries, it was more than just business. The demonstration of the disproportionate fruits represented by the Jews is another prism into this legacy. It is a prism by which we close the gap of the broken seen world with that of the undefiled unseen dimension. It is in this legacy of restoration that the swirl of chaos and destruction so rampant in this world will be subdued. So then, what is the response in terms of Jewish business secrets? The Jewish perception of reality comes from within the community and from above. This perception of reality is foundational to the dynamic of disproportionate achievement. The Jewish response to reality is laced with a creative, community-building mindset. It goes back to Abraham, who passed on that his descendants would bear the blessings of God to be a blessing to all the other nations of the earth. It represents the priority given to the community and to posterity. So the Jewish process of stewarding reality involves commitment to the community and future generations. That means that each business is designed to serve and make a difference. This commitment operates on a level beyond the individual nurtures destiny, not only for the individual, but for the benefit of the community, of those who share in their identity. Jews understand what it means to cultivate God's blueprint within the incubator of community. Our past sessions together on Jewish business secrets have uncovered a range of insights tied to the amazing legacy and exploits of the Jews. We've gone beyond foundations, the gifts, and a process of thinking that creates and brings increase. We've tapped the strategy of community that nurtures the destinies of its members from one generation to another. We live in a time when we again face the disruptions of cyclic change that characterize the many moneyed ways of this world. The legacy as a people of destiny is in the realignment and purification of the defilements. Harvard professor Ruth Weiss, in the prologue of her compelling book, Jews in Power, tells a story of a Jewish mother in 1939 Warsaw, following Warsaw's capture, but preceded the Jews being walled up in the ghetto. Seeing her little boy being bullied by some German soldiers, this mother left the safety of her courtyard and fearlessly, ignoring the soldiers, she told her son as she rescued him, "Come inside the courtyard and be a human being." Implied in the translation of the instructions to her son was his response to what was happening around him and how to become a decent human being. Beyond budgets and plans, at the core of Jewish business secrets is the Jewish response to the status quo. In practical terms, it is a response that gives honor to the God of Israel in his ways, while walking out the fulfillment of the legacy of those who from generation to generation have been bearing the fruits of the mantle as the descendants of Abraham. I'm Morris Ruddick. We hope you found this series on Jewish business secrets helpful. If you have missed any, please go back and review them.